Okay, hopefully this is the last video. We have, I think, maybe 4 problems left. I'm skipping number 20 because it gets really messy. But I'm going to jump now to 21. We have, looks like 4 problems where we're trying to find absolute maximums and minimums. And these actually, I think you might hopefully find not too difficult. Let's just do these, and we'll talk about them as we go along. So 21, here's the first one. F of x equals x cubed minus 3x plus 2. Now the key is we're trying to find the absolute maximum and the absolute minimum of this function, but only inside this interval. We're only looking between x negative 2 and 3/2. It's like we're only looking like in this window. We don't really care what happens. Other parts, we're only looking at the function between negative 2 and 3/2. So what we have to do is we have to figure out inside this window, are there any relative maximums or minimums? And the way we do that is to do what we've always done. Take the first derivative of the function, and the max and the mins are critical points. The way we find critical points is we set the first derivative equal to 0, and we solve this. And this is difference of squares. Looks like there are 2 possible relative maximum or minimums. Now the thing is you have to do, are these points in my window where I'm looking? Negative 1, yes it is. 1 also is. So they both are. Now here's what you do. We are now going to simply take both of these values of x and plug it in to the original function to see what the value of the function is. Because we're looking, what is the absolute maximum of the function, the largest value, and then the minimum, the smallest value of the function. We know it has to either be these 2 points. I'm going to in a minute figure out f of negative 1 and f of 1, but then you also have to compare it to the edge points, to the low and high points of your interval, because those oftentimes end up being your absolute maximum or minimum. So in summary, what you do is you find your critical points, negative 1, 1, you make sure they're within the interval that you're looking at, and then if they are, we're going to calculate the function at those critical points, and then also look at the function at the edge points. And I'm going to have 4 values of the function here, and the largest one will be the absolute maximum, and the smallest one will be the absolute minimum. Now I've gone ahead, just to save time, when I did this math before, f of negative 2, when you plug negative 2 in to the original function, turns out it equals 0. F of negative 1 is 4, f of 1 is 0, and f of 3/2 is 0.875. So all you do is now, for the absolute maximum, you see which of these values of the function is largest. 4 is the largest. For the minimum, you say which of these values of the function is the smallest. And actually, there are 2. So you say the absolute maximum occurs when x is -1, and the absolute minimum occurs, you have two possibilities, when x is either 1 or -2. They're both the same. All right, hopefully you didn't find that too difficult. 22, same thing. Find the absolute maximum, minimum, and here the interval is between -8 and 8. Same thing. Find any relative maximums or minimums inside this interval. Take derivative. Looks like it's -3x squared. As it turns out, critical point is simply x equals 0. Now that is inside my interval, so now I'm going to calculate f of 0, and then my edge points, f of -8. I don't even need to know at this point whether this is a relative maximum, relative minimum. It doesn't really matter. That would just be extra work that's not necessary. At this point, I'm just going to go look at these values of the function, and then I'll be done. So as it turns out, when you plug in -8 into your original function, you get -511. When you plug in 0, you get 1. When you plug in 8, whoops, I wasn't being careful. This one's -511. This one's 513. So obviously, absolute max, what's the largest value? 513 occurs when x is -8. Absolute minimum, the smallest value is -511, and that occurs when x is 8. There you go. All right, the last two. I told you these absolute maximum problems are not too bad compared to what we have been doing. So here's this function, x to the 4th minus 2x cubed. The interval is from -2 to 2. Let's take the first derivative so we can find our relative maximums, minimums. 4x to the 3rd minus 6x squared. If we factor out a 2x squared, 2x minus 3. Critical points, or its relative maximum or minimums, would be x equals 0, and from here, 3/2. Both these critical points are inside my window. So now I'm going to calculate f of 0, f of 3/2, f of -2, and f of 2. This one's 0. This one's -27 over 16. This one's 32, and this one's 0. So the absolute max, largest number here is 32 when x is -2. And the minimum is this right here when x equals 3/2. Now actually, when I look at the instructions, it may have been asking to give the points. Didn't really say. On the instruction, if they ask to give the point, you don't just give the x. So for instance, if they ask for the points, I got this net flying around. The maximum would be -2, 32, and the minimum would be x3/2, -27 over 16. So if they ask for the actual points, you need to put the both x and the y. All right, last one. This will be the last problem of the review. Another absolute max or min problem. And let me find the problem. F of x equals x plus 1 over x. And the interval is 1 to 20. First derivative is just 1. This is really, you can think of this as x to the -1. So you have negative x to the -2. So there's your first derivative. To find critical points, set it equal to 0. That's going to occur when x is 1. 1 is within your window. Matter of fact, it's one of the edge points. So basically, you want to find f of 1 and f of 20. Let me make this point up here. Actually, you could have said, and I should have said, x could be plus or minus 1, because both those would cause this whole thing to be 0. So I could have said -1 and 1, but then you look at -1, it's not in the interval. -1 is not allowed. So even though it is a critical point, because it's not in the window where I'm looking, I discard it. And that's why I'm just looking at f of 1 here. F of 1 is 2, f of 20 is 20.05. So the absolute maximum would be 20.05. The absolute minimum would be 1, 2. All right, so that is it. Pretty much worked through all the problems in this review, so hopefully that'll help you all as you prepare for the test.